You're scrolling through a dating app, or maybe you're looking up a new coworker on the company's Slack directory, right?
Oh, yeah. Always checking the bios.
Exactly. And right there, right in their bio, you see it. A cryptic four-letter code, like INTJ or ENFP, ESFJ.
It's literally everywhere now.
It really is. It's almost like a secret handshake for the modern age, right? You see those letters and you're immediately supposed to know who this person is, how they work, and I mean, maybe even if you're compatible with them.
Right. It is incredibly pervasive. You see it at corporate team building retreats. It's woven into all these social media memes. And people even use it as the whole foundation for relationship advice.
Yeah.
We are, of course, talking about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or the MBTI. And what's fascinating here is that while millions of people use these letters to define their entire personalities, very few actually understand the mechanical engine running beneath the hood.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you actually dig into the original Jungian psychology that started it all, and then you compare it to the modern clinical data and practitioner manuals, you realize almost everyone is using this framework completely wrong.
Completely wrong. Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive into the source material is to really separate the pop psychology memes from the actual framework. We're going to figure out how this system is actually supposed to work, where it completely falls apart from a strict scientific perspective, and why, despite those massive flaws, it remains so incredibly popular.
Definitely.
And the most important thing to remember right out of the gate is that the MBTI isn't about boxing you in. It is really about offering a lens to understand human preferences.
Exactly. My goal today is to explore not just what these types are, but, why we rely on them so heavily to make sense of the world. Because understanding the mechanics of this system and the modern psychological critiques of it, it tells us a profound amount about how we try to understand ourselves and, well, each other.
Yeah, so let's start with the baseline, the four foundational dichotomies. This system was created by Isabel Briggs Myers and Catherine Briggs, and it was heavily inspired by the psychological theories of Carl Jung.
Right, the original Jungian archetypes.
Exactly. It essentially breaks down human behavior into four dimensions. First, you have energy, so extroversion or introversion. Second is information, which is sensing or intuition. Third is decisions, so thinking or feeling. And fourth, lifestyle, judging, or perceiving. You take one from each category and boom, you get your four-letter type, like INTJ or ESFP.
Right. And those dimensions are specifically designed to identify psychological preferences in how you perceive the world. Like literally how your brain takes in information and then how you make decisions based on that information.
Now, I want to jump in here with an analogy because I think this is a crucial distinction that just completely gets lost in all those internet quizzes.
Oh, absolutely.
The MBTI measures preference. It does not measure ability or skill or intelligence. So think of it like being right-handed or left-handed. If you're right-handed, imagine trying to sign a massive stack of mortgage documents with your left hand.
That sounds miserable.
Right. You are fully capable of doing it. Your hand isn't broken, but it requires intense concentration. You're sweating by the end of it, and it completely drains your energy.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Whereas writing with your right hand is just automatic. It requires zero conscious effort.
That's a great way to look at it. And taking that handedness analogy a step further, the fact that people confuse preference with ability, that leads directly into the biggest myths surrounding the MBTI.
Oh, the myths are everywhere.
We see this constantly in the pop psychology space. So let's look at the first major myth, the idea that introverts are shy and extroverts are confident.
Yes, you see this one all the time. People think an introvert is just someone hiding in the corner at a party.
Right, but the framework actually states that introversion and extroversion are strictly about your energy source. It describes where you naturally focus your attention to recharge your battery.
Like plugging into a wall.
Exactly. An extrovert gains energy from social engagement and the outer world. An introvert gains energy from solitude, reflection, and their inner world.
Okay,
So you can have a highly social, incredibly confident, charismatic introvert who simply needs a quiet weekend afterward to recharge their social battery.
Oh, wow.
Conversely, you can have an extrovert who experiences severe social anxiety, yet still feels totally understimulated and drained when they're isolated in a room.
See, that distinction changes everything. It's about energy, not social skills.
Exactly.
What about the thinking and feeling dichotomy? Because people just assume feeling types are like crying all the time, and thinking types are these cold, calculating robots who only speak in binary code.
Yeah, that is another massive misconception. Feeling types are not just emotional, and thinking types are not devoid of feelings. This dichotomy is entirely about your decision-making process.
Okay, how so?
Imagine a manager having to make budget cuts. A thinking preference means the manager prioritizes logic, consistency, and objective truth. They look at the spreadsheet, see the numbers, and make the cut.
Clean and simple.
Right. A feeling preference means the manager prioritizes values, harmony, and the human impact of the decision. They look at how the cut affects the team's morale and livelihood. Both managers are using logic and both have emotions. They just prioritize a different metric to arrive at their final decision. It's a values-based process, not emotional reactivity.
That makes so much more sense. And the last one that always gets twisted is judging versus perceiving.
Oh, yeah.
The neat freak myth.
Exactly.
Mm.
People think judging types are highly organized neat freaks with like color-coded closets, and
Perceiving types are just lazy and messy.
Which is just fundamentally wrong. Judging and perceiving simply describe your outer lifestyle orientation. A judging preference means you prefer structure, plans, and closure. You like having the decision made so you can just move on.
Right. Checking it off the list.
Exactly. A perceiving preference means you prefer flexibility, adaptability, and keeping your options open. Perceiving does not mean lazy. It means you gather information to the last possible second to ensure you have the best options.
Ah.
Okay. And judging does not mean controlling or even that your bedroom is actually tidy. It just means you experience stress when things are left open-ended.
Okay, so those are the 4 letters. But if you just stop at those 4 letters, you are really just skimming the absolute surface, which leads us into the actual psychological engine running beneath the hood, the cognitive functions.
Right. This is where the theory gets significantly deeper. According to Carl Jung, and later expanded by psychologists like John Beebe, there are 8 cognitive functions.
8, not 4.
8. There are 4 perceiving functions, so ways of taking in information, and 4 judging functions, ways of making decisions. Every single personality type uses all 8 of these functions, but they are arranged in a very specific hierarchy or a function stack for each type.
The sources give a really detailed example of how this hierarchy works using the INFP type. If we think of this function stack like a car, how are the passengers arranged?
Okay, think of the dominant function as the driver. For the INFP, their number 1 function is introverted feeling, or phi. We call this the hero.
The hero, got it.
This means their strongest, most unconscious driver is a deep inner moral compass. It acts like an internal tuning fork, constantly vibrating to tell them what feels authentic and right.
Okay, and who's next to them?
In the passenger seat, you have the auxiliary function, the parent. This navigates and supports the driver. For the INFP, it's extroverted intuition, or NA. This is how they explore the outside world, brainstorming massive interconnected possibilities that align with their deep values.
So the hero drives and the parent navigates. What about the back seat?
Behind them is the tertiary function, the child. It's a comfortable space, but it's not always mature. It's where you go to play or relax.
It's like a literal child in the back seat.
Exactly. For the INFP, it's introverted sensing, or C. They use this to revel in nostalgia, remember fond personal details, or just seek physical comfort.
Okay, and the last one.
Finally, strapped into a car seat in the very back is the inferior function, the toddler or the aspirational function. This is the weakest point.
The toddler. That sounds dangerous.
It can be. For the INFP, it's extroverted thinking, or TEA. They struggle intensely with organizing external systems, building rigid to-do lists, or enforcing strict rules, but it's something they aspire to master later in life.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking at the breakdown of these cognitive functions, and I need to push back on something here.
Sure.
Let's take an INTJ and an INTP. They share 3 out of their 4 letters. They are both introverted, intuitive, and thinking types. They only differ on that last J versus P letter. How can they possibly be that different? It feels like a massive flaw in the design if changing one single letter changes who they are.
It sounds totally counterintuitive, but they do not share a single cognitive function in their top 4 stack.
Wait, really? Not a single one.
Not one. The J or P letter at the end actually acts like a switch that flips their entire cognitive engine inside out. Let's look at the mechanics. An INTJ's dominant driver is introverted intuition, or NI.
Okay.
NI acts like a massive funnel. It takes in all the subconscious data from the world, filters out the noise, and narrows it down to one singular, highly likely future vision. They have these sudden aha moments.
But predicting the future.
Kind of, yeah. Their parent function is extroverted thinking, or TE. So they take that internal singular vision and act like a ruthless project manager, building highly organized, efficient external systems to make that vision a reality.
Okay, so that's the INTJ. And the INTP, their brain works differently.
Entirely differently. The INTP's dominant driver is introverted thinking, or T. If Ni is a funnel, T is an intricate internal mental spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah. Every new piece of information has to fit perfectly into a logical cell. If a new fact contradicts the formula, the whole mental spreadsheet flashes red.
Oh, wow.
Their parent function is extroverted intuition, or Ni. Instead of narrowing things down like the INTJ, Ni acts like a sprinkler system. It looks at the external world and brainstorms a million different possibilities connecting completely unrelated topics.
So the INTJ is narrowing down to one prediction and organizing the outside world.
Right.
But the INTP is perfecting an internal logical model and brainstorming endless external possibilities. On the surface, they look like quiet nerds, but mechanically they're entirely different engines.
Exactly. They process reality in completely opposite ways.
That is wild. But okay, knowing how your brain optimally functions is great for a Tuesday morning when you've had a good cup of coffee, but what happens when the project manager quits or that internal spreadsheet crashes?
Ah, the stress response.
Yeah, because if our brains are essentially relying on these carefully balanced passengers, what happens when we burn out?
That brings us to Naomi Quank's fascinating work in her book, Was That Really Me? She details the mechanics of what happens under extreme stress. It's a concept called the inferior function grip.
The grip.
Yes, remember that fourth function we talked about, the toddler strapped in the back seat?
Right, the weak aspirational one that we aren't very good at using.
Precisely. When a person is experiencing severe, prolonged stress, trauma, or even just extreme fatigue, their dominant hero function basically runs out of battery. It completely shuts down.
The driver falls asleep at the wheel.
Exactly. When the driver passes out, that untrained toddler function escapes the car seat and takes the steering wheel.
Oh, no.
But because it has never been properly developed, it operates the car in a deeply unhealthy, toxic way. You fall into the grip of your absolute worst traits.
I want you, the listener, to think about how you act on your absolute worst days. Think about the behaviors that make you look in the mirror later and feel, honestly, completely unrecognizable to yourself.
It's a universal experience.
Let's trace the logic of this. If an INTJ is normally a futuristic funnel, constantly planning 10 steps ahead, and their toddler function is extroverted sensing, which is all about the physical, immediate, present moment, does that mean under stress, they just lose their minds and live entirely in the physical moment?
That is exactly what happens. Because their dominant planning function is exhausted, their brain hands the keys over to the physical present. But because that muscle has never been trained, it acts completely unsupervised.
So what does that look like?
The highly strategic INTJ suddenly falls into severe overindulgence. They might start stress eating, impulse buying things they don't need, sensory binging on television, or engaging in reckless physical behavior. They completely lose sight of tomorrow.
Wow. Okay, what about the types whose normal state is everything is predictable and safe? Like the ISTJs or ESFJs,
Right.
their dominant function is introverted sensing, which makes them very grounded, dependable, and past-focused. But their toddler function is extroverted intuition, the brainstorming sprinkler. So if their normal state is safety, does their toddler just start imagining every possible way things could go wrong?
Yes. Instead of seeing positive possibilities, their exhausted brain starts catastrophizing. A normally practical, calm ESFJ will suddenly experience scattered panic. They will obsess over bizarre, worst-case scenarios that have absolutely no basis in reality.
Like what?
Like, if I don't answer this email perfectly, I'll be fired, then I'll lose my house, then I'll be living in the woods. They lose all their practical grounding.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Our biggest blind spot, the function we are least comfortable with, literally becomes our master when we are burnt out.
It's terrifying, but true.
And if our brains are getting hijacked by this immature toddler function under stress, that has to cause absolute chaos in our relationships, right? Imagine an INTJ bringing that impulsive binging energy into a disagreement, which brings up how the MBTI impacts who we date and how we work.
It plays a massive role. When we look at the branch of this theory known as socionics, which analyzes intertype relations, one of the most fascinating concepts is duality.
Reality.
Yeah. This looks at pairings that seem like a recipe for disaster on paper, like an INTJ pairing with an ESFP. They are opposite in every single letter.
Yeah, you have the quiet, futuristic strategist paired with the loud, spontaneous party animal. How does that not end in an absolute explosion?
Mechanically, they are highly complementary because each person has the other person's inferior toddler function as their dominant hero strength.
Oh, they cover for each other.
Exactly. The INTJ's dominant intuition covers the ESFP's blind spot for long-term planning. Meanwhile, the ESFP's dominant sensing grounds the INTJ's physical weakness.
Okay, give me a real-world example of that.
Let's say they are planning a vacation. The INTJ naturally maps out the logistics and assures they don't go bankrupt. But when they get there, the INTJ might forget to actually relax and enjoy the sand.
Right, they're too busy managing the itinerary.
Exactly. But the ESFP effortlessly takes over, forcing the INTJ to touch grass and live in the moment.
Wow.
They naturally protect each other's vulnerabilities, creating very high potential for mutual growth.
That is so cool. And the sources contrast that with contrary pairings, like an ESTJ and an INFP. They are also opposites, but their internal engines clash in a way that requires a massive amount of emotional maturity to navigate, because they don't naturally cover each other's blind spots in the same way.
Right, it takes a lot more conscious effort.
But wait, I have to ask, if I am an INFP, someone driven by deep internal values and brainstorming, am I just doomed to fail as an accountant or a data analyst because my engine isn't built for it?
No. Absolutely not. And the source material is very explicit with its caveats here. Any type can succeed in any job, and any type can have a successful relationship with any other type.
So what is the point of the career lists? The manuals always list ISTJs in accounting and law enforcement, or INFPs in writing and therapy.
Those lists simply show common natural tendencies. It goes right back to your handedness analogy.
Oh, right.
An INFP can absolutely be a brilliant accountant. They might find deep value in helping families secure their financial futures. But sitting and crunching objective, rigid data all day will require more conscious battery power for them than it would for an ISTJ who just does that automatically.
Got it.
The framework just highlights what kind of environment will drain your battery the fastest.
So if someone listening wants to figure out their actual underlying cognitive engine, digging through these practitioner manuals gives you a remarkably clear roadmap. First, and this is a massive warning from the sources, do not use the wildly popular 16 Personalities website.
Please go.
The training manuals point out that 16 Personalities is actually just the Big Five personality model wearing an MBTI mask. It doesn't measure cognitive functions at all. You want to look for official assessments or Jung-based models.
That's a crucial distinction.
Second, look at what you do automatically. Ask yourself, what do I do almost without trying and feel totally drained when I am not allowed to do it? Third, look at your grip state. Ask yourself what you overreact to under extreme stress. Look at your worst days. If you catastrophize, if you binge, if you become hypercritical, that will point you directly to your toddler function, which instantly reveals your hero function.
Exactly. It works backwards.
And finally, ask your friends for honest feedback. We are terribly biased about ourselves. Ask them if you actually make decisions based on cold logic or if you actually bend over backward to keep group harmony. The people close to us often see our engine running much more clearly than we do.
That is an excellent synthesis of the practical application. But, as robust as this cognitive theory is, we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh boy, here we go.
Modern personality psychologists and clinical researchers actively reject the MBTI.
Right. As much as I love diagnosing my friends' toddler functions, I know the scientific community has a massive bone to pick with this system. If we connect this to the bigger picture of empirical science, where does it fall apart?
It faces severe criticism on a few fronts. First is the issue of scientific reliability. A scientifically valid test should give you the exact same result every time you take it.
Makes sense.
But the MBTI has moderate reliability at best. Depending on the study, up to 50% of people receive an entirely different four-letter type when they retake the test just a few weeks later.
50%? That's a huge margin of error.
It really is. Second, and perhaps more importantly to organizational psychologists, it has very weak predictive validity. Knowing your MBTI type does not strongly predict your job performance, your intelligence, your overall success in life, or your mental health.
And businesses use this for hiring.
Which is highly controversial. Modern psychology relies on tools that can actually predict those outcomes. There's also the Barnum effect at play here.
That's the horoscope effect, right? Where a description is written so broadly that anyone can project themselves onto it. Like, you are generally a kind person, but you can be fierce when provoked. Everyone reads that and thinks, wow, that is so uniquely me.
Exactly. We see ourselves in the vague, positive traits. But the most fatal structural flaw, according to researchers, is the problem of artificial categories.
Artificial categories.
Yeah. Human personality traits exist on a continuum, not in binary boxes. Think about introversion and extroversion. Most people are ambiverts, sitting somewhere in the middle.
Right, depending on the day.
But the MBTI forces a binary choice. It takes someone who might be 51% introverted and 49% extroverted and forces them into the exact same rigid introvert box as someone who is 99% introverted. It loses all the nuance of human behavior.
That makes total sense. So if clinical psychologists hate the MBTI, what do they actually use?
They favor the Big Five personality model, also known as OCEAN. It measures 5 traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. But the key difference is that instead of forcing you into a category, it measures those traits on a sliding scale. It tells you that you score 72 out of 100 on extroversion-related traits. It doesn't label you. It simply maps where you fall on the spectrum. It is far more scientifically supported and heavily backed by decades of data.
So what does this all mean? If it's not strictly scientific, if it forces us into artificial binary categories, and if it can't actually predict our job performance, why do millions of people still put these 4 letters in their dating bios? Why do we still use it?
It's a great question.
The source material gives a really compelling answer to this. It's because the MBTI is incredibly easy to understand, it is highly memorable, and it creates a vital common language for self-reflection.
Absolutely.
Think about it. The Big Five might be like a high-resolution 4K photograph of your personality, but the MBTI is like pixel art.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The 4K photo is more accurate, but the pixel art is instantly recognizable from across the room. Even if it's not a perfectly calibrated scientific instrument, the MBTI is a profoundly useful tool for empathy. It gives us a vocabulary to pause and say, oh, my partner isn't trying to be cold and mean. Their brain just prioritizes the mental spreadsheet over the emotional impact.
That is the core value of the entire framework. The MBTI should be viewed as a descriptive tool, not a definitive measure of your soul. It is most valuable for understanding differences in perspective.
Right, it's about preference, not limits.
Exactly. It helps us realize that just because someone processes the world differently than we do, it doesn't make them broken or wrong. It just means they have a different preference. It should be used to foster empathy and communication, rather than to place rigid limits on what you or the people around you can achieve.
To quickly recap our journey today, we started by looking at those 4 simple letters. We dug deep into the cognitive engine running beneath them to see who was actually driving the car.
The hero.
Right, we saw how those very same functions can hijack our brains like an unsupervised toddler under extreme stress, and we weighed the framework's practical, everyday magic against its real scientific flaws.
And the ultimate takeaway from all of these sources is that this system is a tool for self-awareness, not an excuse for bad behavior.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder on your own. If our MBTI type is just a reflection of our baseline preferences rather than our actual abilities, how many of the limitations you place on yourself saying, I'm just not an organized person or I'm just not a people person, are simply comfortable habits you've chosen to identify with rather than who you actually are capable of being? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material.